Father, we really want to do good works. Our problem is at times seeing someone else's work as good. Often it seems as if some are calling good work simply foolishness. Help us to be generous in our patience toward one another, especially with those who entertain differing opinions. And when others might see our good works as foolishness, help them to be also generous in their thoughts, actions, and yes, perhaps even their comments. We pray for our nation and its elected leaders. We don't always understand everything that is transpiring in our nation, but we pray that they are listening to good counsel and to your quiet voice. And especially for those who have recently lost loved ones, we pray for your comforting presence. Now, as we gather the work set before us to do, might we be guided by the mandate of doing good works for the people of Kansas. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have all members had an opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
HB 2372 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, requested by Representative Kessler, an act concerning state memorials. HB 2373 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning immigration.
House Bill 2132 is withdrawn from the Committee on Child Welfare and Foster Care and referred to the Committee on Federal and State Affairs. Messages from the Senate. The clerk will read.
Announcing adoption of SCR 1603, Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 1603 by Senators Tyson, Alley, and others, a proposition to amend Section 1 of Article 11 of the Constitution of the State of Kansas relating to property taxation, limiting valuation increases for real property and for personal property classified as mobile homes used for residential purposes.
Introduction of original motions and House resolutions. The clerk will read.
HR 6007 by Representatives Croft, Amex, and others. A resolution recognizing the Kansas National Guard Best Warriors and Airmen of the Year. Whereas the Kansas Air National Guard's 190th Air Refueling Wing at Forbes Field Air National Guard Base in Topeka, Kansas, currently flies the KC-135R Stratotanker and provides significant contributions to our national defense. And whereas the Kansas Army National Guard Best Warriors and the Kansas Air National Guard Airmen of the Year represent the most accomplished enlisted members of the Kansas National Guard. And whereas the Best Warrior competition is designed to test all aspects of a soldier through a 4-day period in which both junior enlisted and non-commissioned officers, NCOs, compete for the title of Best Warrior. And whereas the competition includes expertise in soldier common tasks, weapons proficiency, outstanding physical fitness, and comprehensive military knowledge. And whereas the Outstanding Airman of the Year competition is an annual event in which airmen NCOs and senior NCOs compete in various areas, including leadership, job performance in their primary duties, the whole airman concept, and participation in the wing and local community. And whereas Specialist Joseph Minder, was selected as the best warrior, Sergeant First Class Cody Breon as the best warrior NCO, Staff Sergeant Darian Legislature as the Airman of the Year, Technical Sergeant Rachel Pence as the Honor Guard Member of the Year, and Master Sergeant Hunter Dial Thurston as the Senior NCO of the Year for the Kansas National Guard. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives by the state of Kansas that we recognize and congratulate the best warriors and airmen of the year for their outstanding service, dedication, and leadership. And be it further resolved that their unwavering professionalism and accomplishments not only strengthen the state of Kansas, but also inspire those around them to strive for greatness. And be it further resolved that the Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives shall send one enrolled copy of the resolution to Representative Thompson and 8 enrolled copies to Representative Crop.
On House Resolution 6007, the Speaker recognizes Representative Thompson for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is fitting that we recognize and congratulate the best warriors and airmen of the year for this outstanding service, their dedication, and their leadership. And they are with us in the gallery. Would you please recognize them and congratulate them? Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Resolution 9007.
You've heard the motion on House Resolution 6007. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Introduction of original motions and House resolutions. The clerk will read.
H.R. 6008 by Representatives Turk, Amix, and others. A resolution supporting the Kansas Air National Guard's 190th Air Refueling Wing based at Forbes Field Air National Guard Base on being a recipient finalist for a KC-46A Pegasus mission and accompanying aircraft. Whereas the Kansas Air National Guard's 190th Air Refueling Wing based at Forbes Field Air National Guard Base in Topeka, Kansas, currently flies the KC-135R Stratotanker and provides significant contributions to our national defense. And whereas the 190th Air Refueling Wing has critical Homeland Defense missions in conjunction with the United States Strategic Command and the United States Northern Command, for which the 190th Air Refueling Wing is uniquely qualified based on geographic location and decades of experience. And whereas the KC-135R Stratotanker aircraft that the 190th Air Refueling Wing uses for these critical national security missions is more than 60 years old. And whereas the 190th Air Refueling Wing is a recipient finalist for a KC-46A Pegasus mission and new aircraft for the United States Air Force, which would replace its aging KC-135R Stratotanker fleet. And whereas the 190th Air Refueling Wing is uniquely suited to perform the Pegasus mission using the new KC-46A Pegasus aircraft due to its strategic geographic location, exceptional facilities, ample uncongested airspace and training areas, available land and airspace for expansion, flexibility to adapt to evolving missions, mission requirements, and exceptionally experienced personnel. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the state of Kansas that the legislature strongly supports the Kansas Air National Guard's 190th Air Refueling Wing with the Forbes Field Air National Guard Base as the location of choice on being a recipient finalist for a KC-46A Pegasus mission and accompanying aircraft.
On House Resolution 6008, the Speaker recognizes Representative Turk for a motion to adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 190th Air Refueling Wing has been my second home for over 20 years. The mission at Forbes Field, Topeka, Kansas is a mystery to most, but for those that know, they're a crucial step in our national defense. Air refueling is what separates us from the adversary. It propels our power across the globe. Our strategic mission in support of the nuclear triad is critical. Over time, though, our airframes age and our mission changes. And it's pivotal that the state of Kansas supports our unit during this change. Their refueling mission in Kansas has been with us for decades. The KC-135 is over half a century old, and the future is right here in our face, and it's our opportunity to lead. This resolution isn't just any other resolution. This resolution will serve as a variable in the decision-making process within the DoD to renew that mission. So you guys that helped co-sponsor here, you guys are a factor. And we'll be able to take this resolution to our federal partners, and they will be able to advocate for us. And for that, you have my gratitude. Mr. Speaker, I move the adoption of Resolution 6008, and that my request and my remarks be spread across the journal.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and your words will be spread across the journal. Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of general orders.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion passes. The Speaker appoints Representative Francis to chair the Committee of the Whole.
And now I got to learn to turn the mic on too. Good morning. First item of business is House Bill 2027. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2027, the chair recognizes Representative Auerkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were committee amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2027 is reorganization of the public assistance programs and statute. Our current statute is a little bit of a mess, and it's hard to follow. It's hard to read through and understand. And that became apparent a couple years ago during the first year of the Welfare Reform Committee, when we saw the difficulty of trying to make the distinctions of the different details within the programs. I asked the revisor's office if they would like to attempt a summer project of reorganizing that statute in a way which they thought would make the most sense, and they agreed to take the challenge. And they worked for many hours to go through the statute, organize it in a more orderly fashion, and try to make it a little bit easier to understand for themselves, the legislature, and all of the agencies who have to work with these programs and the statutes. I did ask the revisors two things. One is to make it what they would like to see. So they understand the statutes, they understand how they would like them organized much better than I do. So I asked them to kind of free range, make it whatever they think is best. My second request was simply not to change any policy. So there is no policy changes in this bill. It is simply a reorganization of the statute. So what did they do? They separated out some of the general eligibility for the programs, and then they split up 3 different programs: TANF, SNAP, and child care subsidies. And then they also broke out some general rules and general guidelines on fraud investigations, drug screenings, support rights, limited power of attorney, and also electronic benefit cards details. I think it's pretty easy overall to see that this is a simple bill, but it's also, I think, a good opportunity to take a part of statute, which has been amended many times over the years, and just reorganize it to help everybody who has to work with it. With that, Mr. Chairman, happy to stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chamber, I think the chairman did a fine job of explaining the bill. Though it doesn't change any policy, there's a lot of policy in here that I've disagreed with. A lot of it I would like to see repealed. I did not support this bill coming out of committee, and I will leave it to the wisdom of the body on where you stand on it today. Thank you.
Is there any further? The chair recognizes Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that this is a reorganization bill. When the original bill took place, I certainly wasn't here. However, this bill encompasses a lot of things. And with that, I want to tell you just a quick story. There was a 19-year-old girl who, for several years, had dated her what would have been junior high school sweetheart. Fortunately, or otherwise, she wound up pregnant and with a child somewhere around 16 or 17. Coming from a good, wholesome family and not believing in doing things that would end the pregnancy, she took the pregnancy full term and she had that child. Unfortunately, after the child was born, the high school sweetheart that she once loved decided that he would do other things. So she was left with this child. But fortunately, she met another young man, slightly older. And he showed up and he did everything. He cared for the child, he cared for her. He loved her like she'd never felt before. Unfortunately, he also lived another life that she didn't know about. He sold illegal substances. But being the loving, caring partner that she was, when the authorities came looking for him one day, she lied. And several times after that, she continued to lie to protect him. But remember, this was the man that she loved. He had stepped up and he was taking care of this child that wasn't even his. But he loved her enough to do that. Unfortunately, they caught up with him one day. They caught up with him and her. And so they were both arrested. They both went to jail and they were both charged. Eventually, they in fact both got sentenced, and although she did a very minimal amount of time, she did do some jail time, and so now she is in fact a felon. She has a record, a criminal record that will ride with her in some areas indefinitely. Now, this young lady, because of that mistake that she made before she was 19, and we all know that 16, 17, 18-year-old girls, they always make the best decisions. We all know that. But because she has this label, this tag, this weight that she carries around that says she is now a felon, when she got a chance to try to get back on her feet, she was unable to as quickly because she no longer qualified for those state benefits that she would have qualified for had she not made that mistake, had she not been in love with that young man, had she never had that baby. Because all she was doing is she never sold a drug, never sold one at all. She was only trying to protect the man that she loved. But because of the Kansas state law, she's now ineligible to receive those benefits. Now, that young lady could have been anyone in this room's child, because we all know that none of our children have ever made mistakes, right? So with that, I have an amendment.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
On page 12, by striking all in lines 16 and 17. On page 18 in line 15, by striking all after 4, by striking all in lines 16 through 37. In line 38, by striking all before the period and inserting a person shall not be denied food assistance solely because such person has been convicted of a drug-related felony. The Secretary for Children and Families shall submit to the federal government any approval requested required to implement the provisions of this paragraph. On page 1, in the title, in line 2, after references, by inserting allowing persons with felony drug convictions to receive food assistance.
Representative, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chair, thank you. Basically, this amendment allows for someone like that young lady in a similar situation to simply get food assistance for a child. If she's trying to get back on her feet and she's got a child, one that she chose to keep. In fact, this was a bill that was introduced by one of our colleagues from this side of the aisle. I've only made it an amendment. It's the right thing to do. We shouldn't continue to punish people for things that they've already paid for. So this would allow her to receive food assistance benefits so that she might be able to feed her child. And I'll stand for questions.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? The chair recognizes Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the maker of this amendment bringing this issue forth, but I do not believe it is germane. Therefore, I challenge germaneness.
Germaneness has been challenged. There, okay. The script was running a little slow. Germaneness has been challenged. Would the rules chair make a ruling on the germaneness of the amendment?
I could be wrong. You remember that, though, it was like 2 years ago. But that's not even a bridge amendment. That's just, they weren't going to use it.
Chair recognizes the Rules Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. So, body, thank you for your patience again. I really appreciate it. The Rules Committee met. A majority of the Rules Committee had the same opinion, and the ruling is that the amendment is not germane, but I need to explain the reason why it's not germane. The principal test, according to our House rules, of germaneness is the relationship to the subject of what the bill is about. Every amendment proposed must be germane to the subject of the proposal or to the paragraphs to be amended. This bill is, the subject matter of this bill is reorganization. It says it in the subnotes. It says it even in the title, even though we don't just go by the title. What is the subject of the bill? The subject is reorganization. There is a chart that some of you may have seen that talks about our current bill language is this. Next to it, it is where those exact words and ideas are in the proposed bill. Nothing changes. There's no substantive changes from our current statutes to what the bill is proposed. It is just reorganizing 3 areas of public assistance so that it is more comprehensive. It's easier to comprehend for people who are on public assistance, for those who work with public assistance. The subject of the bill is reorganization, and therefore an amendment that substantively changes the statute is not germane. Thank you.
The Rules Chair has ruled the amendment not germane. We're back on the bill. Representative Carr, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it very difficult to believe that when we open the statute that is welfare reform, no matter how you tally it up, it is welfare reform. And my amendment was simply speaking to welfare reform. I also find it difficult to believe that a majority percentage of this body would be so uncaring as to those people that are in blighted situations.
Please stay on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the bill is simply a reorganization and the bill doesn't allow any amendments, even those that would be better for the constituency and the citizens of Kansas, then I'll yield. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This legislation before us today is a very interesting bill because as the Rules Committee ruled, it does not substantially change eligibility. It reorganizes. So I would like to propose an amendment that does not substantively change anything related to the programs in this bill.
The amendment is short. The clerk will read.
As amended by House Committee on page 22 in line 9 by striking all after the period, by striking all in lines 10 through 16 on page 1 in the title, in line 2, after the second semicolon by inserting removing the requirement of express legislative consent of expansion of Medicaid services by an act of the legislature.
Representative, would you like to explain your amendment?
I would like to explain my amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment strikes language, just like much other language in this legislation is stricken. This amendment strikes language that was, that's about 11 years old. It does not change any eligibility. It does not make an additional person eligible for programs. It simply changes who holds decision-making responsibility, and it now offers that responsibility to either the legislature or the governor. And I'm happy to stand for questions.
Would anybody like to speak to the amendment? Chair recognizes Representative Auerkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what does the amendment do? The amendment would strike the language that restricts the governor from expanding Medicaid on her own. So if the amendment got on, then the governor would be able to go around the legislature and expand Medicaid. So please vote this down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion? Sorry about that, Representative. Chair recognizes Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would the carrier of the amendment stand for a question? Just for a point of clarification, does your amendment refer to any sexual orientation of the governor, whether it's female or male?
No.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, the last speaker came up here and made reference that the female governor, which would be implied, our current governor, would be able to add or restrict or do something with Medicaid. Let's focus on the bill. This amendment is good because it's for the long term of the state. It doesn't matter if it's this current governor, the next governor, the governor for my great-grandchildren, it's for the governor. So let's stay focused on what the amendment is, and please pass this amendment. Nice job.
Chair recognizes Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would the carrier of the amendment stand for a question, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So for those in the body who may not really understand what's going on here, could you kind of explain what parts of the language of the statute that's struck? Just clarify for them.
There is language in the statute that deems Medicaid expansion can only be the decision of the legislature, and it would strike that and make it the decision of either the legislature or the governor.
Okay, thank you so much. Body, I understand that you may not be enjoying this process right now, but it is the process that we're given. Many of us have been fighting to expand Medicaid for since the ACA was implemented and it was an option for our state, I've been up here previously speaking on behalf of expansion, very specifically last year or the year before when I offered a similar amendment. And it still stands that this is good policy and this is a great opportunity to go ahead and make sure that we can try it out and offer it to our constituents, 70% of which who have expressed that they support it. Unfortunately, there have been many roadblocks in the way to getting this policy through, so we have to be creative with our efforts. The language in this, well, the statute is being completely rearranged. Language is being stricken, language is being added, which is why this it is a good idea and it's a great way to do this. But in addition to that, I would like to remind you that we do still, as a legislature, have the ability to get money from the federal government in order to support this program for the next 7 to 8 years at no cost to the state if we were to go ahead and do this. Now, I had mentioned that previously as well when I was speaking about this specific language strike, and I think that we really need to consider that. This would also allow us to roll it back if it didn't work for our state. Although I will note that every state that has expanded, whether they're under a Republican or a Democratic leadership, has not decided to repeal their expansion. With all of that said, this is a really great and creative way to get things done. I would hope that some of you would like to come up here and debate the merits of it. I've really been looking forward to that for quite some time. So if anyone's brave enough to do so, please do. But please support this amendment. Thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Weichel, you may close.
Okay.
I think we just had Representative Warpisa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the bringer of the amendment stand for a question?
Yes.
Thank you, Representative. Will you please explain to me what expansion does?
Yes, thank you for that question. So I think this is the crux of the question here. What is expansion? And I think that it's been whittled down to a couple talking points on both sides, and I think it's worth taking a few minutes to truly understand what we're talking about here and what we're debating. The Affordable Care Act, or the ACA, was built on 3 pillars as a form of insurance. Employer-sponsored insurance, which has been shored up, marketplace coverage, where many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in this country receive tax credits to purchase their health insurance, and Medicaid. Those were the 3 pillars of the Affordable Care Act. Why are we still debating the 3rd pillar of that? The Supreme Court ruled that Medicaid expansion under the ACA would be a state option. Therefore, it's up to every state to make this decision. But let's talk about who it actually affects in Kansas. So if you are an adult in Kansas and your income is under 100% of the poverty level, which for a single person is $15,650, you are not eligible for any form of affordable health care in this state. You are not eligible for tax credits on the marketplace, and you are not eligible for Medicaid assistance. If you are an adult with a dependent child at home, it's a bit more generous. You're eligible if you earn 38% of the poverty level, which for a mom and 1 child, if you earn more than $8,037, you are not eligible for Medicaid in this state, and you are not eligible for tax credits to purchase private insurance. This is the coverage gap that Medicaid expansion has left behind, and there are tens of thousands of our community members and our neighbors who would benefit if we could just move forward with this. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Representative. And I appreciate this amendment because I know in Wyandotte County, we have about 7,800 people who could very much benefit from this amendment. And I hope you will look at what your county has and what they could possibly benefit as well. And I hope you vote for this amendment.
There's no further discussion. Representative Weichel, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So who are we talking about? We talked about the income levels, but who are these people in our community? They're the home health aides that are going in to take care of seniors and persons with disabilities in their homes. They're childcare workers taking care of our kids while we go to work. They're retail workers, they're paras in our schools, and they're construction workers. They are our neighbors, and we are leaving them behind. And to those, I do not come from a rural part of this state, but I recognize how important it is to keep our rural communities vibrant. And we have a major problem when it comes to healthcare. 62 rural hospitals are at risk of closure, the most in any state. And if we could expand Medicaid, nearly half of the uncompensated care that they have would be eliminated, shoring up their fiscal strength and allowing them to bring more providers into the community. And as a previous representative spoke, this policy could not be more popular and more bipartisan. There's been polling done on this in this state for a decade. It has consistently shown that upwards of 70 to 80% of Kansans support Medicaid expansion. They understand its importance. They understand its importance for people. They understand its importance for hospitals, for providers, and for our state as a whole. It consistently polls high among Republicans, independents, Democrats, rural folks, and folks from urban communities. And then I've heard also that it's expensive, and I'll say this is the best deal we're ever gonna get. The government pays 90% of the cost, the federal government pays 90% of the cost. We pay 10%, but there is incentives on the table, which if we were to adopt starting in 2026, we would actually be bringing net money into Kansas. We would not have to spend SGF in the next 2 years to support this policy. So, as a reminder, this amendment alone does not expand Medicaid. It returns us to the original structure that allowed either the governor or the legislature to make this decision. The legislature has held this decision within their power for over 10 years and not acted on it. It is time that we think about other routes. A vote against this amendment says that you will continue to be a roadblock to Medicaid expansion, denying health care to tens of thousands of Kansans, further jeopardizing rural hospitals, and putting Kansas at economic disadvantage with 40 states, including all of our neighboring states. A yes vote on this amendment says that you think it's time Kansas move past political ideology that has needlessly caused rural hospitals to close, left our neighbors and community members without an option for affordable health insurance, and has made Kansas forfeit $7.5 billion. Kansans are watching this vote, I can guarantee that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I move my amendment.
You've heard the motion by Representative Weichel to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The noes appear to have it. Division has been called. Seeing 15 hands, a roll call is in order. Clerk will open the roll. Has every member had an opportunity to vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member wish to change their vote? Seeing none, 37 having voted in favor, 84 opposed, the motion fails. The clerk will record the vote. Representative Weichel still has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? If there is no further discussion, Representative Hauerkamp, you may close. Okay. Representative Reeves?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I vote no on this bill. I find it confusing, maybe even hypocritical to have this bill introduced. I understand the reason behind it of wanting to reorganize it to be able to get through it, to be able to read it, be able to understand it better. But that's only for our benefit, right? It's for the benefit of the legislators and it's for the benefit of the revisers. Just fine. What about what's for the benefit of the people who are the recipients of welfare in our state? Do you know how confusing, I bet most of you don't. Do you know how confusing it is to apply for any assistance? Have you ever been into an office to try to apply for assistance? We complain about how it might be a little difficult to go to a DMV. That's nothing. It can be quite confusing to people. And if you have a child, it's even worse. We can't even come to a consensus with having an office for the child. We had a hard time trying to get an office of the child advocate, and now we can't even get an office for early childhood education. If you needed home health or community-based services for your child, there's like 8 different funding mechanisms in order to get that. How are we supposed to navigate through that? How are women supposed to be able to navigate through that? That's what we should be doing. Instead of spending time on reorganizing this, is we should spend time trying to figure out ways that families can receive the services, that adults can receive services, that those with special needs can receive services, and have that more accessible and less burdensome. I vote no on this, and I urge everyone else to vote no.
Is there any further discussion? There is no further discussion. Representative Hauerkamp, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's been a lot of changes to this statute over the past decade or more. A lot of good changes, which I believe help Kansas implement these programs more based on the spirit and the true meaning of the programs, which is to help people when they're time of need and also help them out of the welfare state. We've seen the successes of many people who have used these programs successfully to become better with their financial situation. And also with this reorganization of statute, it does help the agencies who have to sift through the current statute and try to find all these nuances. It does help those agencies work through the statutes much more easily because now they're laid out in an organized fashion. And that is part of the intention. With that, one final thank you to the many revisers, specifically the ones we had on our committee last year, who spent many hours, I would say into the hundreds, trying to make sure they did a very good job. There's no policy changes in all their work. So thank you very much to them. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports House Bill 2027 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Auerkamp to report House Bill 2027 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. Next item of business is House Bill 2085. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2085, the chair recognizes Representative Essex.
Good afternoon, body. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill, HB 2085, was introduced by the House Committee on Water at the request of the Director of Environment on behalf of KDHE. HB 2085 would allow the Secretary of Health and Environment to issue a water pollution control permit for up to 10 years at the discretion of the Secretary. Currently, the Secretary may issue a permit for 5 years, so they're just asking for a little bit longer. Proponent testimony was provided by the Director of the Bureau of Water of KDHE, who explained that there is a movement at the state level to increase wastewater permit terms from 5 to 10 years for facilities that do not discharge to streams. The bill would allow KDHE to begin issuing wastewater permits to non-discharging facilities with up to 10-year terms at the agency's discretion. There was one opponent who didn't want the change, and there were no committee amendments, no fiscal note, and with that, Mr. Chair, I stand for questions.
Chair recognizes Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The carrier did a great job of explaining the bill. A couple of notes. I did originally have some concerns about extending these permits to 10 years, but a few things changed my mind. Mainly, I think it is really important to triage these permits, which is something that the department is trying to do. And there can be sideboards put in place for the agency regulations that limit these 10-year permits to simple facilities, facilities with no history of compliance issues, and general permits, which narrows who will be eligible for the 10-year permit process. Additionally, rationale for those 10-year permits has to be documented, and there has to be a 30-day public input process. So because of those reasons, I do support the bill. I think it will help the department focus on complex and problematic systems, which comprise much of their backlog currently. So I do think it's a good bill, and I urge your support.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Essex, you may close.
Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports HB 2085 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Essex to report House Bill 2085 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next item of business body is House Bill 2092. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2092, the chair recognizes Representative King.
Mr. Chairman.
You may proceed.
From the Committee on House Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, we're bringing before House Bill 2092. House Bill 2092 modifies the automatic expiration date of professional employer organizations, which there's about 80 of them in the state. Updates the filing requirements for annual audits and changes the surety bond requirements for the PEOs, the professional employer organizations, with insufficient working capital. This is a cleanup bill from a couple of years ago from House Bill 2790, when this moved from insurance to the Secretary of State's office. With that, I would stand for questions.
Chair recognizes Representative Sawyer Clayton.
I think that the carrier of the bill did an excellent job explaining it, and he actually made an original motion in committee to move this to the consent calendar, but we thought that he would do a fine job explaining it all to everyone up here. So he did a great job. Let's all welcome him, and just happy to have you on board.
The chair recognizes Representative Anderson.
Would the carrier stand for a few questions?
Yes, Mr. Representative.
Representative. Is this your first job in Kansas politics?
Define politics, please.
The legislature or any state agency?
No, this is not my first job. I was former Secretary of Transportation from 2012 to 2016.
I thought I'd seen that on your resume. So as the transportation budget chair, I hear a lot about the Bank of KDOT. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'm not real familiar with that term. But I believe you have a reference to about a $2 billion KDOT budget that goes to provide outstanding quality roads and bridges in the state of Kansas. Yes, I believe that. Is that what you're referring to the Bank of KDOT?
That was. Well, we heard you were coming back to Topeka, so we hid the key from you. I just, on behalf of the entire chamber, just want to welcome you to the legislature.
Thank you. I was only hoping.
The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Well.
Mr. Representative, it's good to see you again.
The last time I saw you, you were Mr. Secretary. Is that the same Mike King?
And the last time I saw you, you were a representative.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I seem to remember one day you came up to my office back in nigh on 2012 or 13, and I caught you digging around in the seat cushions looking for spare change. Was that you?
Mr. Representative, I learned a lot from you and others in my time in government politics prior to this. Yes.
Well, members, I want you to know that the secretary here and I are of a very different party, and we had some differences about how transportation dollars could best be spent and what rates of return could be. Whether you could earn 1% or 0%, or if we could spend the money on dog catchers. I can't remember all the things, but I want you to know that the secretary of the Bank of KDOT is a damn fine man, and welcome to the legislature, my friend.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Take care, Bob.
Is there any further roasting of the, or toasting of the good representative? Seeing none? If there's no further discussion, Representative King, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the body rises to report, they report HB 2092 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative King to report House Bill 2092 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion carries. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we rise and report.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of whole recommends that HB 2085, HB 2092 be passed, HB 2027 be passed as amended.
Speaker recognizes Representative Francis to adopt the committee of the whole report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion passes. Speaker recognizes Representative Croft for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Rule 2311, I move that an emergency be declared, literally this time, House Bill 2027, House Bill 2085, and House Bill 2092 be advanced to the order of business, final action on bills and concurrent resolutions.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
HB 2027 by Committee on Welfare Reform, an act concerning public assistance, reorganizing subsections of the public assistance statute, updating cross-references.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2027. The clerk will open the roll, and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Wassinger votes aye. Representative Turk votes aye. Representative Sutton votes aye. Representative Waggle votes no. Representative Humphreys votes aye. Any further changes of vote? Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Seeing none, 88 voting in favor and 35 against the passage of House Bill 2027, the same having received a constitutional majority. The bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
HB 2085 by Committee on Water, an act concerning livestock relating to the Department of Health and Environment, extending the expiration of permits issued under the Water Pollution Control Permit System from 5 to 10 years, allowing the Secretary to issue permits for terms of less than 10 years if valid cause exists.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2085. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 123 voting in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2085, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions, the clerk will read.
HB 2092 by Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, an act concerning labor and employment relating to professional employer organizations, providing that registrations of such organizations with the Secretary of State shall expire on October 15th following issuance, providing an exception therefrom for registrations issued on or after January 1st, 2025 that shall expire on October 15th, 2026, making the time for filing annual audits by such organizations coincide with the time of renewing of registrations, limiting the means of providing surety by a professional employer organization with insufficient working capital to the provision of a bond, and eliminating the market value measure of the sufficiency of such bond.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2092. The clerk will open the roll, and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 123 voting in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2092, the same having received the constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
The Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends HB 2065 be passed. The Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunication recommends HB 2110 be passed. The Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends HB 2158 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Judiciary recommends HB 2062 be passed. The Committee on Health and Human Services recommends HB 2280 be passed. The Committee on Judiciary recommends HB 2155 be passed. The Committee on Education recommends HB 2102 be amended by substituting with a new bill to be designated as substitute for House Bill number 2102 as follows: an act concerning school districts, and the substitute bill be passed. The Committee on Local Government recommends HB 2116 be passed. The Committee on Welfare recommends HB 2115 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Local Government recommends HB 2145 be amended by substituting with a new bill to be designated as substitute for House Bill number 2145 as follows: an act concerning fairs, and the substitute bill be passed. The Committee on Legislative Modernization recommends HB 2238 be amended and the bill be passed as amended.
Is there any objection to returning to that order of business, introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions? Seeing none, seeing no objection, the clerk will read.
HB 2374 by Committee on Appropriations requested by Representative Francis on behalf of the University of Kansas, an act relating to healthcare professions. HB 2375 by Committee on Appropriations requested by Representative Ballard on behalf of the Office of the Governor, an act concerning health and healthcare. HB 2376 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs requested by Zach Denny, Department of Revenue, an act concerning alcoholic liquor. HB 2377 by Committee on Taxation requested by Representative Hoheisel on behalf of Sedgwick County, an act concerning sales and compensating use tax. HB 2378 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs requested by Representative Will Carpenter, an act establishing removal of Squatters Act. HB 2379 by Committee on Federal and State Affairs requested by Representative Owsley, an act concerning firearms.
Temporary committee assignments. Representative Megan Steele will replace Representative Ken Corbett on the House Committee on Federal and State Affairs on February 14th. The appointment will expire at the end of the day on February 14th. Representative Silas Miller replaces Representative John Alcala on the House Committee on Appropriations on Thursday, February 13th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on Thursday. Representative Susan Ruiz replaces Representative Kirk Haskins on the House Committee on Federal and State Affairs on Thursday, February 13th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on Thursday, February 13th. Representative Kirk Haskins replaces Representative Susan Ruiz on the House Committee on Veterans and Military Affairs on Thursday, February 13th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on Thursday the 13th. So normally we wouldn't have EFA'd today, and I assume you all know why we EFA'd. because we have this massive snowstorm heading our way. I've been in consultation with certainly the Senate President and also with the governor's office. Talked with the governor's office early this morning, and then they sent me another update at 11 o'clock. Looks like the storm hits into Topeka around 1 a.m. Tomorrow morning. Originally, it looked like it would start today, but it's moved a little bit. So it'll probably start somewhere around midnight, 1 a.m. And the biggest amount of snowfall will probably occur between around 3 and 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. That doesn't mean that it's not going to snow all day. And of course, you know, it started out being 10 inches of snow, and now they're talking about maybe maximum 7 or 8 inches of snow. And it could be a lot less than that. But therefore, we will adjourn. When we adjourn today, we will adjourn until Thursday at the appropriate time so we can keep the staff at home, keep all of us at home safe, and not have anybody on the roads getting stuck, getting in accidents or anything like that. So that is the purpose for the EFA today, is just simply so we finish this section up, get everybody out of here at the end of the day. Now, looking at the rest of the week, we should be back to work on Thursday, and because we're losing Wednesday, we are going to be here working hard on Friday. So we will have debate on Friday. We'll just move whatever bills that we were supposed to do tomorrow, we'll move those on over to Thursday and move the Thursdays to Friday. So Friday will be a big day for us, so just plan on, we'll make it up on Friday. Then we come back next week, and we have 1 day of committee, and then we start immediately the next day into floor work for the next 3 days. So just wanted to share with you why we're doing what we're doing. I think it's a prudent thing, even though we don't know what that ultimate snowfall looks like. I do think we got enough people on the road. We want to keep them off the road. So any other announcements? Are there announcements? Oh, I missed a side. All right, we'll back up. Sure did. More committee assignments. Representative Oropeza replaces Representative Brownlee Page on the House Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources today, and this appointment will expire at the end of today. Representative Oropeza replaces Representative Dan Osman on the House Committee on Federal and State Affairs on Thursday, February 13th. The appointment expires at the end of the day on the 13th. Representative Angela Martinez replaces Representative Heather Meyer on the House Committee on Federal and State Affairs on Thursday, February, well, it says 12th. I think that's the 13th. They messed up on that. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on Thursday. Representative Heather Meyer replaces Representative Angela Martinez on the House Committee on Water on Thursday. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on Thursday. Representative John Ackler replaces Representative Silas Miller on the House Committee on Federal and State Affairs on Thursday. Appointment expires on Thursday. Now, on to announcements. Speaker recognizes Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Financial Institutions and Pensions Committee, you heard the previous message from the Speaker. We, of course, will not be meeting tomorrow, but we will have to meet Friday at 9 a.m. We do have a room change. We will be meeting in 218 North. Friday at 9 a.m., the same agenda that we had for tomorrow, but it's going to be in 218 North. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Blake Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I sent you the language for the Taiwan resolution. It is over on my desk, so if you would like to sign on to that resolution, it's over on my desk. If you'd like to go ahead and sign, I encourage you to do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Oropeza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, today, the Wyandotte County Leavenworth delegation will not meet. We will resume next week. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On your desk, you have a salmon-colored memo from the Legislative Research Department on behalf of the Capital Preservation Committee. We're seeking help to enlist individuals, organizations that will lead the art project, which is the mural for the first Kansas Colored. So please, while you're home, next couple of days, weeks, enlist the help and suggest to people who may be interested in leading this effort. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Drive to Zero Coalition is a coalition of transportation stakeholders from across the state that their sole focus is to drive the fatalities on our highways to zero. They were going to have an event in the Rotunda tomorrow because of weather that has been postponed until March 27th. And also for those of you on the Transportation Committee and the people that had bills that we were going to hear tomorrow, we will try to work those Thursday. So with that, thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fed and state, listen up, listen up. Since we're not going to be here Wednesday, we are going to just push Wednesday into Thursday. So we'll be doing both Wednesdays and Thursdays on Thursday. So we will be having a hearing on HB 2164, and we will have some final action on the HCR 5006. So be prepared Thursday, busy day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Speaker recognizes Representative Bergquist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Local Government Committee will not be meeting tomorrow. Therefore, it'll be meeting on Friday, same committee room, same time, 9 o'clock, and watch your emails for updates on what we'll be dealing with. Hopefully, we'll be able to take action on things that we would have tomorrow. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Southeast Kansas Legislative Caucus will meet immediately upon adjournment in 142 South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Legislative Modernization, this is a quick announcement. We will be still meeting on Friday, the 14th, 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. in room change 582 North. I say again, 9:30 a.m., 582 North, where we will have a closed executive session to receive legislative post-audit reports on IT. We will also see if we need to, so pay attention to your emails and see if we're actually going to be working bills if we have enough time. There may be some modifications to that. Otherwise, we will be working bills in earnest come Monday. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Sutton.
Right. Sorry, buddy. I forgot I pushed the button there. Insurance Committee, if we're canceling tomorrow, we will be working on Friday. I don't have a date and time yet, but the other option was our bill hearings via WebEx, and I absolutely despise WebEx. So we're going to work on Friday. I'd rather work on a Friday than have a WebEx hearing. So we're going to meet on Friday. I'll stay tuned, and I'll have a date and or a time and room for you at that, probably on Thursday. Thank you.
I'm sorry I skipped over you, Representative Neighbor. Speaker recognizes Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with a sad heart that I come before you today. We lost one of our former House members this morning, and that was Mr. Representative Bob Tomlinson. He passed early this morning. I do not believe he'd been ill. I spoke with his son yesterday at quite some length. If you don't know Bob, he was a representative here in the House, but he was more than that. He was a teacher for many years. He taught history and was very proud of the job he did because he worked in an alternative school a lot of his time when he was teaching. He worked with kids that had multiple issues, but he was always there to represent them, to stand up for them, and to be a leader to them. So he also served as an undersecretary of the insurance department under Sandy Prager. So he was very involved in government. I could be wrong. I think he was a Republican. I don't know why. But I'll have to have that discussion with his son. But Bob was greatly regarded with a lot of history, a lot of laughter, and a very rare sense of humor. Please have his family in your prayers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Beeler.
Social Services Budget Committee, we did have a hearing scheduled for tomorrow. That's obviously canceled, so we will reschedule that for Thursday afternoon. Same time, same place. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, Speaker recognizes Majority Leader for a motion to adjourn.
Okay, so we've all got tomorrow. Republicans, I believe every side's actually already calendared on all the bills that we'll hear the rest of the week. So with that, so there's no meeting, but Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Thursday, February 13th at 11 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.